Testing, testing. Under there, green slide.
Testing, testing. Okay. We will get underway. Welcome everyone to tonight's meeting. Is there anyone new in the audience? Any new members, first-time people? No. Not. Okay, great. Then let me turn down the lights and we will get some announcements done. Okay, upcoming meetings. Always a change, always something happening. Lisa Kuchara, who is one of the Photoshop geniuses, who is going to be coming here and giving us a workshop and a talk, is now not coming here due to various reasons, but instead we've convinced her to Zoom it in. So that night is going to be Lisa's lecture by Zoom. Creativity is contagious, pass it on. Tremendous amount of Photoshop, just techniques and whatnot that she uses. So basically that is going to be a Zoom talk and the clubhouse will be open. That is next Friday, June 2nd. June 9th is another Zoom lecture, very interesting, photographing places of worship, not just cathedrals, temples, mosques, all over the world. I've looked at Padma's website. It's very, very interesting because these aren't we've all been in cathedrals and have taken the usual shots and seen them, but she just finds very interesting ways to photograph these places of worship and is going to talk to us about that. So that is the Zoom talk on June 9th. June 16th, the clubhouse is going to be closed. We are going to do an encore presentation of a Clevelander, Gabe Wasilko, who gave us a great talk on landscapes and more, and this is Cleveland landscapes. So he basically is just all around Cleveland, places that we've been to as well, but his shots, I remember when he talked originally, were just, oh my gosh, you know, I've been there, but why didn't I think of that? It's just really, really creative. So that'll be June 16th. That'll be an encore performance. The clubhouse will be closed. It'll be a rebroadcast. Now, for the biggies, June 23rd, don't miss this. John Paganini and I are going to give our AI photography, what this means for CPS. It's going to be a live demonstration as well. We're going to use DALL-E and Midjourney. We're going to have prompts from the audience. We're going to generate photographs up here, as well as present all of the issues. And I'm not going to say ethical issues. It's what does this mean for CPS? How are we going to change our rules? What do we want, not want? All of those kind of things as well. It'll be a great discussion. I changed the pictures I had along this. I put this because it's like the Wild, Wild West. Literally. Every day things are changing, new programs are coming, new applications are using this. It's popping up in so many different places that, again, I want CPS to be out ahead of this. So we are going to have a great lecture with John and I that night, going over all of AI photography, the cutting edge, and how we want it to fit into our club. June 30th, again, by popular demand, is our critique night. We're doing now 4 times a year. Please submit some photos. No judging allowed that night. We are strict. We screen at the door. No judges. Constructive criticism, CPS panel. 3 images. They could be any images taken any time at all. Send them to info@clevelandphoto.org. I will get them up there, and we will go over them that night. That also is when any suggestions we have, cropping, editing, we do in real time on the screen as well. Our SIG meeting coming up June 1st with Dave is drone photography. Again, Dave is going to fly his drone. I saw him do it in here with minimal damage. Talk to us about specific certification, photographic opportunities. He's doing a book on drones. It should be a very, very interesting evening. That's June 1st. Back to the Wild, which has already occurred. If you're on Back to the Wild field trip, send your photos into, again, the info@clevelandphoto.org. Again, we will put them up on our field trip gallery. And please be patient. Our new website is coming June 19th. So I'm going to post all these pictures you send in. I'm putting on our gallery that's going to appear on our new website. Same thing, anyone who is at Blossom Time Balloon Glow, send your photos. Up to 5 photos, info@clevelandphoto.org. We will get them up into our field trip galleries. The Wild field trip coming up, sold out already. We hope to, with this being as successful as it was, to do this again. That's coming up May 31st. Mansfield Reformatory, spots are still open, coming up June 3rd. That is always a favorite every year. And our Fundamentals of Good Photography Summer 2023 virtual course is open for enrollment. Again, it started June 1st. It gives you a head start over the summer for anyone wanting to learn. And it doesn't matter if there aren't any real classes, because once you pay, you're a student for life, and you can come back to any of the sessions in the future and take the hands-on portion then. You could retake it again. So it's a way to get a jump if you're thinking of fundamentals without spending any more money. And you can sign up on our website, clevelandphoto.org. Again, field trip gallery, up to 5 images. It's always good on these field trips to see what other people saw in the same place that you went. Just title your image or rename it with your name and a number, because that's what translates over to the website, and send them in. The new website, patience just a little bit longer, June 19th. I think you'll really love it. It's interactive. The last 2.5 years worth of Zoom talks and lectures that we were not allowed to put on YouTube are going to be in a members-only site here, so you'll be able to access all of those as well as all of our new galleries, and again, June 19th. And also, let me just go back, please be patient. You'll notice, as of this point, we're so close to June 19th that I haven't really been updating as well as we should the calendar for the current website. So you might not find things on our current website calendar because we're populating this one. So again, on June 19th, when this comes out, everything for the rest of the year will be listed correctly on the calendar. All of our meetings, this one, the AI photography, all of our public meetings, you could watch on our YouTube channel. Just go to our main page on our website and click on the YouTube icon. When you get to YouTube, click on the live portion and you'll see in date order all of our lectures again. So that concludes our announcements. And tonight, I'd like to introduce, we have our own Bev Kenworthy and her husband Craig. And they're going to be talking to you, let's have a hand, talk to you on travel photography, 50 states and 30 countries. And I turn it over to Bev.
Oh, okay.
Let me
Is that
bring up.
okay? Is that working?
Can we hear you?
Can we hear me?
Yes, we can, yes.
Okay. All right. So, when I was a little girl, I was fascinated by the Disney castle, and all I wanted in my whole life was to see that someday. And one of my dad's friends, his name was Hartzell Haddon, told me one night when he was at our house that, you know, you could go there. It's a real place. It's in Germany. And I grew up my entire life wanting to go to Germany to see it. And it was near the time of our 25th anniversary. We had gotten mostly the kids through college, and we could actually eat something other than hot dogs. We had 3 kids in college at the same time. So we went, and it was a tag on to a trip he had to make to Germany for work. And he says, well, gee, we know ahead, I'm going for this thing, so why don't we plan a vacation? And that was where we went. I mean, to me, this was, I don't know why, it doesn't look that way on my commercial or on my computer with the U, so some other things might be out of line. If somebody knows publisher like really good and could figure it out, I would be, I mean, that is in fact a different font. That's probably half of the problem than what I'm using. My next big thing, I have always loved penguins and polar bears. Have not gotten to see real penguins in penguin places yet, but we're going in the next February to Patagonia and the Falklands and Antarctica. So I'm very excited about that, but I did get to Churchill, Manitoba to see polar bears. This is a trip I went on with my mom and my best friend back in New Jersey. It was wonderful. So a snowy owl in a real snowy owl place, not out on the rocks and the jetty at Mile Long Pier in Lorraine. And the entire time we were there, National Geographic was right next to us on the Tundra buggy right next to us. They were staying in the same hotel. There were 3 hotels in Churchill, and there's 3 restaurants. 2 of them remain open past summer because everybody, gets the hell out. And that same year, we also went to Alaska. Oops. But this talk is more about how to get your stuff there in one piece. And it's all something we struggle with, what to take with us, how to get it there, how to pack it, what to put in your checked bag, what you shouldn't. And when I started out, I had 2 SLRs. By the time we went to Alaska, I had 2 SLRs, and my big lens was a 70 to 300, not a whole lot of weight. And I think I had maybe a 55 to 200 or a 18, maybe it was an 18 to 55. I had like 2 lenses to my name. So it was not a whole lot of stuff to worry about. I think packing the rolls of film and getting there safely without them being x-rayed and ruined was as big a challenge and took as much room as my photo gear at the time. Nope. But I don't understand what happened with the,
It's, your slides, I think, were 16 by 9.
Yeah, but it's a different font even.
And I think it compressed it here to 4 by 3 format.
Oh, it could be. I don't know what happened. But anyway, I used a different font. We have been some unusual places. One of them is, a lot of us have been to Iceland, I think, but one of the places we've really loved was Newfoundland. So if you ever get a chance to go there, go. It's a 17-hour ride on a ferry overnight, and it's worth it. It's kind of like awful food, and you're in a room that's, barely wide enough, but you do have your own bathroom. That's a requirement for me. And so, you'll see some pictures there. So when I have, and I brought a few items along with me. I use a think tank bag. A number of years ago, I had to have a pacemaker, and I was told I absolutely, because of the way they had to locate it, could not ever use a heavy backpack again. So we had to redesign because I had a backpack. That's how I carried everything. And so I have the think tank roller bag. This thing to me is wonderful. It has the pull-up just like any other roller piece of luggage. It has lots of pieces that come with it so that you can build the inside of that bag anywhere you want. It has packaging, some slots on the front to put a computer, a notebook, a Kindle, whatever. You can put it in there. And these things hold so much stuff. I also usually carry something like this bag. I bought that when I was in Tallinn with my mother. It started pouring just out of nowhere. It was a bright sunny day, and then it wasn't. And so we ran into the first store we could find just to get out of the drenching rain. And I bought that. And you know what? I found that when I was walking in a city, I could put that over my shoulder. It was big enough I could slide my camera into it. And people really didn't notice the expensive stuff I was carrying. So if I wasn't actively using it at that moment, it was a real good way to kind of camouflage the fact that, I was just another American with a Nikon. The other thing I like about the think tank is it comes with a rain cover for the entire suitcase, so that's really handy, as do all of the, I use the belt for carrying stuff since I can't use a backpack on a hike. I use that. If you fit it right and the belts are adjustable, you can carry a lot of weight around your waist as long as you keep it adjusted tight so it doesn't slide down on your hips and you won't feel the weight. Yeah, I guess that's what's happened. So one of the things that I'm usually the one that plans the trips. We have been on a few tours and cruises and stuff, but for the most part, it's like, let's line it up. Where are we going to go? What do we want to see? What can we figure out while we're there? And what do we need to plan ahead? So regardless of what it is that you are doing to get there, whether it's on a boat, a plane, a car, you're crossing borders or not, you need to know what your documentation is, and you need tickets. Where will you stay? Don't depend on any place having open rooms. You might think, oh, it's off season. It doesn't work. You really, really do have to have reservations made. When we've been to Europe, we've generally stayed in a castle wherever we've gone. And that's something that's easier now. There's places that are clearinghouses for that, and, services that will, just like Airbnb, there are companies that do castles. But it didn't used to be that way, say back in the 90s or early 2000s, so you had to find them yourself and really do a lot of research. So it wasn't the easiest thing, but we figured it out. And those had to be well booked ahead. Appropriate clothing for the destination and also the activities. We went on a cruise to Norway, and it was a fjord cruise. We looked at all the options for how are we going to see what we want to see while we're there. And that was a cruise ship. We wanted to go on a mountain hike in the Lofoten Islands, and they were clear. You must have appropriate hiking boots. And of course, somebody shows up on the bus with flip-flops. They didn't get to go that day. I mean, it's just not the kind of place that you could do that. And so, sometimes you think, oh, they don't care. I paid for it. They're not going to refund my money. Well, they're not going to refund your money probably because you took the place on that bus. But they're also not going to let you go. There are safety issues. So that was something we saw happen. Limits on baggage, size, weight, and the number of bags, depending on, again, are you going on a plane? Are you going on small planes within a trip? and you may be really, really limited. Safe transportation and storage of your photo gear, which we'll talk a little bit more about, and any special permits and permissions needed for photos. There are places that do require that. So know ahead. If you need to apply, you better do it ahead. Don't show up that day and they'll say, oh, I really wanted to see this place and take some pictures. They don't care. We've never had it happen, but I do know people that have had it happen. So passports. Everybody seems to say, well, gee, why don't I just get the passport card? Yes.
Just back one, how do you find out whether or not you even need a permit?
It's usually on websites, like some of the national forests and stuff where they have it limited, you would find it. And call. Just call, just dig into it. I've never run into it, but I know, like I said, I know people that have. It's like using drones. I'm sure David will cover that next week. You can't use drones in a lot of places. And so don't show up with one and start flying it. You're likely to be carried out with handcuffs. So there's three things that generally we use for identification, and a passport book. Most countries that we've traveled to require that you have 6 months before expiration at the time you enter the country. So if you're entering Canada, you could probably do with a passport card, but say we're going to be flying to Argentina. So we will need to have 6 months availability to the end of that passport when we enter that country. So if we go in June, we need till the end of December. And that is, every country is a little bit different, but that is almost the standard that we've run into. A passport card is for you if you are driving over a border or you are on a cruise ship. You can very often use a passport card. Double check. Don't get caught the day of your boat taking off. You've flown to Miami or wherever to go on a Caribbean cruise and can't get on the boat because you don't have the right ID. And a driver's license, you would need it if you're renting a car overseas. They're want to know that you're licensed somewhere. Usually, there used to be, and I don't know, I haven't run into it, Craig, you would know. You used to be able to go through AAA and get an international driver's license for $5 or $10. And I don't know that anybody really requires that anymore, but I would say get your enhanced driver's license if you're traveling out of the country. But even to get on a plane in the U.S., you're going to need it. They keep moving the date, but I would say if you know you're going to be traveling, you're going to be flying, get the enhanced one. It costs $25 bucks as opposed to $16 for the 4 years. And where will you stay? You really have to think about it. Don't assume you're going to be able to find a place where you would want to stay. You could probably find a place here we are in Copenhagen, but you could probably find a terrible place to stay somewhere in Copenhagen that's not booked up. But try and stay somewhere safe. Somewhere you can leave your hotel and feel like your stuff isn't going to be stolen. You could leave something in a safe and it would be there when you got back. It's all things to think about. Standards are different in various countries. So also remember, we live a really charmed life here. And we can travel very freely across the country. That's not necessarily the same in another country, especially a third world country. We were in August one year, we were in Nova Scotia. We got to our bed and breakfast that we were staying in that night. There were people in our room. They left the keys sitting out on the counter. The people that owned the place were nowhere to be found. And we grabbed the keys, we opened the door, and there's somebody standing with it in a towel. Somebody was laying in the bed. The room looked like it had been trashed. And we spent that night, instead of enjoying Nova Scotia and the scenery and how beautiful it is, we spent the entire night trying to find a place to stay. That is a busy season there in August. And the only places that had vacancy, I would have slept in the car. And he's laughing, he's ready to kill me because he was done. We had traveled all day to get there, and there we were, no place to stay that night. We finally found a place that was, I don't know, it seems to me that the U.S. charge, the U.S. dollars, it was close to $500 a night. But hey, they had a restaurant there, and it was clean and pretty and a beautiful view. So we were happy to stay there and glad to only stay there one night at that cost. If you're not familiar with an area, again, dig into it. Learn about the city you're going to stay in or the area you're going to stay in. Is it safe? If you're driving, is there a place to park your car nearby? Where will you store your gear? If you go out to dinner and you don't take your camera with you, is it safe to leave it in that room? And also, and we've run into this, we often travel with with a dog. I have a 3-pound Chihuahua, and she's a real good little traveler. But when it says that the hotel chain is pet friendly, that doesn't mean that particular hotel you reserved is pet friendly. We ran into that, was it in Georgia or somewhere on our way back from Florida, and we had to go hotel searching again. And we were lucky, we found one right nearby. It was probably a nicer place, but again, it was like, are you kidding me? We just drove 9 or 10 hours, and now we have to go looking for a hotel because this particular one, and I think it was a Country Inn and Suites, didn't take dogs. And the other thing I would really encourage you to think about is where you're going. Just because it is July in Cleveland and we all know what the weather is probably going to be like here, though it's a little crazy at times, think about where you're going. If you're going on a Panama Canal cruise, it's so hot and miserable. I don't think I was ever so hot and miserable in my entire life as that trip. But going to Norway in June, it was frickin' cold. We were up on the Cape, and we timed the cruise and picked that date so that we would be in the Arctic Ocean on the summer solstice. So we were way up there, and it was cold. It was windy. We're out on a 1,000-foot cliff looking down on the Arctic Ocean. It was absolutely gorgeous there, but it was cold. It was like in the 30s. It was windy. I did pack a down coat, thank God, and I had lots of layers, but be aware of what the weather's going to be like, regardless of where you're starting to where you're going to. Question? Oh, I thought you had a question. Okay, some of the things we find, again, footwear, wear your hiking boots on the plane. They take a lot of room in a suitcase. Packing cubes, I don't know how many of you are familiar with those, but they're little zipper pouches and also shirt folders. And you can put them in your suitcase. You can put your socks in one. You can put your pants and pajamas or whatever in others, however you decide to divide it up. But if you're packing and moving around a lot, hotel to hotel, or you're, say, on a cruise ship where you have limited storage, it's real easy just to throw it in the drawers out of your suitcase, put the suitcases under the bed, and then all your stuff is right there. If you say, I need socks, you can just pull the sock container out. You can buy them on Amazon. They're cheap, and they last forever. Gloves, yeah, if you need gloves on a hike, don't leave them in your hotel room. Guess why I say that? And remember when you're packing your suitcase that you're going to be packing, especially if you're flying, things in your suitcase. There are things you should probably think about adding to your suitcase. Okay, so I kind of like to look at it as what should you leave at home? And anything that you don't need. And then those other things after you cull through it that you really don't need. And what can be put into check bags and what should not. In your check bags, I have the pouches and belts from Think Tank. They're going to go in my suitcase. I'm going to put things in them so I don't waste space, but they weigh nothing. They're lightweight foam and I don't know what some kind of acrylic, and they flatten out, but you can use them to put things that might break, like your tripod head. If you're packing a tripod or monopod and you're putting your head in your suitcase, don't leave them together. We've all seen how they throw your luggage onto a plane, so don't let them break it before you ever get anywhere. Tools, things break. I spent one morning in Las Vegas. I think you were probably golfing, and my tripod head fell apart. And I didn't have any tools with me. I was all over the hotel. They finally called maintenance for me and said, can you bring this lady a screwdriver and a wrench before she goes out of her mind? But I needed the tripod. I never did get to take the pictures because it took so long to make a wrench and a screwdriver happen. So I have some little things I carry with me. Spare lens caps. You can order, like if you have a lot of 67 millimeter or 72s or 82s, whatever the common sizes are of your lenses, you can, again, order them on Amazon. They cost a couple dollars. You can throw them in and they don't take any room. They weigh nothing. Throw them in your suitcase. Hats, gloves, hand warmers, plastic ponchos, trash bags, and lens cloths. You want something safe to wipe your lenses off with, not the shirt you happen to have on that day, or a towel in the hotel room. I always tell my mentees, bring a trash bag, a folded up 13-gallon kitchen trash bag, stick it in your back pocket. It takes no room, it weighs nothing. Bring a couple with you. And if it starts to rain, like at the air show last year, Richard was there, soaking wet. Jackie, Mike, you were there, right? I mean, it was some of the hardest rain I've ever seen. And Eric lost a camera over that. Yeah, I mean, really, this can happen. And they say they're sealed, but how well sealed they are is not always great. But I had a trash bag with me, and I pulled it out, and I went cinched it up over both cameras and lenses, and it held 2 cameras, both with large lenses on them. tighten it up, and there you go. And again, this is cheap, and it could save you thousands. Sensor cleaning kits, especially if you're going somewhere that it's real dusty like the desert. Blowers, lens cleaners, clamps or clips, put them in your suitcase, and your power converters. What should never be in a checked bag? Your cameras, your lenses, lighting equipment, and chargers. Batteries, you cannot check lithium batteries. Tripod heads unless securely wrapped. So if you're putting your tripod head, which we all know are not cheap, in a suitcase, make sure they're wrapped really well. Memory cards. I would never put a memory card in there, especially one filled with pictures. Because if that got stolen or damaged in some way, well, there goes your trip. Computers and other electronics, Kindles, iPads, whatever. Your ID, credit cards and cash, and prescription drugs. Okay, so I listed everything here that I have in this. And this is kind of this is what I think I want to take with me. You're going to need, if you're taking your computer, for God's sakes, don't forget to take your card readers. If you're using CF Express cards, I don't know of any computer company that's building them into the computer anymore. You know, if you're just using SD cards in your camera, well, then you're probably okay. But so I have XQDs, I have CF Express, and I have SDs. And my computer, my newer computer, does not even have an SD card reader built into it. Prescription drugs. I'm on a lot of crap, and I have to take medication 3 days a week, or 3 times a day, every day. Some things only 3 days a week. But I have to carry them. I don't want to lose them. I mean, if I'm on a 2-week vacation, I want them in my carry-on. And I can show you afterwards how I pack them. Your ID, your credit cards, your passport. I have a little purse up here somewhere, sitting there, that I bought at a shop up in Quebec. And it was perfect. It has a little slot that at the bottom that has a area big enough just for cards. And then it has one perfectly sized for a passport. And the next thing is a longer thing. And it's perfect because you can easily sit inside of your carry-on bag, because that will count, that little tiny bag will count as as your personal item. And then all of a sudden, how are you going to get your computer bag or your under seat thing on? So think about those things. So these are all the things. These were my wish list actually for that trip. So, and as you can see here, this is my list. I've got 2 computers, a pile of lenses, a ball head, tripod, right on down the line, remote shutters, card readers, and then you have to decide, what do you really need? Get rid of half of it, leave some of the lenses home. I have here a 40 millimeter 1/8 prime. Well, if I'm going to be in a lot of museums and the light's not going to be real good, that's an excellent thing to take with me. But why would I take that when I have a 24-200 that's going to cover that if I'm mostly doing landscapes? So think about those things. What lenses do you really need? This, by the way, I thought was one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Escalante. It was the quietest place we've ever been. The only sound you could hear was the wind going through the canyons. It was magnificent. So my think tank bag is really, it's made to be carried on as your overhead item. That is the size right there. Standard, though some airlines in the US are a little bit different. So again, if you're flying on a airline that you don't normally fly on, double check what their standard carry-on size is. This guy here, it's a 17-inch, it'll hold up to a 17-inch computer. Actually, I've carried 2 computers in it. And my prescription drugs, I can stuff my purse in there. I also carry a little little plastic file folder. I print everything. I don't want to depend on having to get online in a country right away to find out where this Uber is going to take us if I can't come up with the address of the hotel because I can't get on their cellular system right away, because it can take a little bit of time. I'm sure it's gotten better, but we have had trouble with that. So all these things, anything I need handy, it's right there. It has a slide thing on the back, you know, to put on the arm. And I have actually pulled I've had a suitcase be overweight by like a pound, and they were going to charge us $65 for it. So I'm out on the curb in Cleveland at the airport, pulling my tripod out and hooking it onto there, knowing I can very easily take it off and slide it under the seat along with my under the seat carry-on personal item. So this is just some ideas for the ways I pack things. My little purse will fit down inside of there. My prescriptions, my printed out itinerary, hotels, everything right there. This is one of the best things we ever bought. It's a power converter, and it has all the various types of plugs that you would run into, but it's also like a little mini power strip. So if you have a computer and we both have phones, we both have cameras. I have more than one camera. It's a great thing to be able to add, you know, so you can charge more than one. And you can also USB your phone into it. And so it's a really nice piece that we've added. And we also have a couple tiny cube ones.
Deb, in your tool picture, the upper right-hand drawer,
Yeah?
you have what looks like an air blower, a black one.
Uh-huh.
And then just to the left of it, I don't recognize what that is.
This?
Yeah.
Okay, it is, I bought it at, what's the name of that place? Rural King? We call it Farm Hole because my son called it that. But it's a place out in Elyria, and I'm sure there's others around, and it's a farm store. And I think I paid $2.99. It has every size, metric and regular American size screwdrivers and everything, heads that you put on a thing. And that's what that is. And it takes no room. It's tiny. The whole thing's about this big. So that's what that is. And of course, sensor cleaners, all the little different sized L brackets, Allen wrenches. There are many reasons that you might want to have a flashlight with you. And I like the telescoping kind. They're only about that big. And I mean, even when we were in Iceland and were out late one night to photograph the Northern Lights, we were really glad to have flashlights with us, because there's no light out there, because there's no people, there's sheep. So what I think is that you need to think ahead. How are you going to carry your gear on a flight is one issue, and on a hike can be another. In my case, I'm not carrying a backpack, but I'm not going to take a roller on, you know, on a hike up a mountain somewhere. It just doesn't work. I don't want to carry it around a city either. I mean, to me, that just puts a target on my back. What if it rains? Carry your trash bag with you. All those fancy raincoats and different things they sell that you can buy, I've bought them. It's in my bag of useless stuff. It doesn't cover a big lens. All those little, I don't know, they call them a photo jacket or whatever. All those things, they're a waste of money. Carry a trash bag. Tripods. Know where and when they're allowed. If you're going into a museum or any indoor area especially, but even some outdoor areas, places do not allow tripods or monopods. Know ahead of time. Leave it in your hotel room, because otherwise you're not getting in. You know, are you not going to go into the Hermitage Museum when you've gotten all the way to Russia? And this is like you're just dying to see some of the things that are in there. If I had a tripod with me that day, I'd have been out of luck. They wouldn't have let me in with it. Backpacks, belts, slings, what works and where. Figure it out for yourself. What works for you, because it's going to be different for everyone. Create a system for protecting your memory cards. Now, the old SD cards had that little lock you could slide up, but I haven't figured out yet on the XQD and the CF Express cards if they do have anything that you can slide to lock it, to protect it so that you can't overwrite anything or, God forbid, reformat the card and lose everything that's on it. So figure out a system that works for you. When you take your, try to back them up every day, but also have a system. Used memory cards go here, not used go there. That way you know, and you're not going to lose everything that you just traveled thousands of miles. Batteries, how will you charge them? How will you carry them? If I'm at home, if I'm going over to Sandy Ridge, I take a camera or two with me, a lens on each one, I throw them in my pockets. But that's not as easy to do sometimes if you're in a place where where a lot of places now have security that didn't used to. So do you really want to be emptying out everything in your pockets? Batteries, like somebody saying, what is that? And giving you a hard time. So figure a way to carry them that it's not awkward. Keep a diary. Notes on your phone app is great as far as where you've been, what you did that day. Take pictures of signs. That often can, say if you go to 3 places in one day, this is at this place, this is at that place, this is at the next one. Just take a picture of a sign. Extra camera body and lenses. If you have an old camera, take the body with you, throw it in a bag somewhere, because if something breaks, you're not going to be able to get it fixed in the middle of nowhere. Richard, I know, has traveled to some interesting places, and I don't think that talk in Mongolia had any of those little huts that would have repaired a camera for him. So, think about those things. Have something as a backup. And always be aware, where is your ID? My suggestion is in a front pocket, not in a back pocket where, especially in cities where it could be pickpocketed, they're really good at it. And, it's the last thing.
I carry 2 wallets, one with a little bit of money in it, in an obvious spot, and another one in the leg. One day I took a friend up for lunch, and in a hurry, I didn't put my credit card back in the secure wallet.
Oh.
I had the other wallet in my front pocket, and it was there,
Yeah.
even in the front pocket.
We had and we think it was through, when we were in England, which was it Uber we used? So we signed on a credit card to Uber, and by the time we got home, we had charges like all kinds of charges, like thousands of dollars on it. We had cash advances all over Florida and Venezuela, and yet we were in London. So, keep those things in mind. Have a credit card maybe with a low credit limit so that at least they get stopped. You're not going to have to pay for it, but at the same time, I don't want somebody going partying on, it really bothers me. And what about a day or a local trip? If I'm going out on Sunday to Ottawa, it takes a little over an hour from my house. I'm going to be out on Route 2. If I have to put my brakes on real quick, I don't want my cameras wrecked because I threw it behind my driver's seat like I often do when I just am driving around the block to Sandy Ridge. So remember, we live in a beautiful place. There's a lot, landscape, birds, animals, there's all kinds of things going on around us. I've lived here 21 years now. Craig was transferred here for his job, and I still feel like a tourist here at times, honestly, and so there's so much. And this, by the way, was in my backyard. But, Berea, Vermilion, wherever those sandhill cranes were, probably in my yard. Marblehead, there's so many things to see within a couple hours. Stone Garden, we've all been there. Newfoundland / Labrador. And this was, again, a favorite trip we went on. This was just wonderful. We flew to Halifax, rented a car, did Nova Scotia, took the ferries, went up there, did the whole thing, because there's one road in Newfoundland. It just goes like that. And it's just spectacularly beautiful. And we saw some great things. It was just fantastic. When we went to Norway, here you go. Next sunrise, next sunset. And I believe that was the 20th of June. So there you go. We did not see the sunset for over a week. So one of the things that you have to think about is how you're going to carry your gear. Again, belt, bag, sling, whatever. Just a camera hanging around your neck, whatever's comfortable for you. But just be ready so that you can get that picture that you see, that you want. And this, when I talk about the think tank belts, the belt is, there. This particular, I am almost done, as you can see, but this little guy here is really nice to carry your ID, my reading glasses, batteries, extra memory cards. It's real small. It's only maybe 6 inches high, and it's perfect for that kind of stuff. And another reason to think twice when you're traveling somewhere, if you're especially in a city, if you have a backpack, you're going to have to remove it to get to your gear. So you might want to think about getting something that is a little bit easier to function with. And just some more pictures. This is a farm in New Jersey. Our friends that just left our house this morning, it's around the corner from their house, and there was it Meryl Streep that was in the movie that was filmed there? So anyway, it was a movie set in Kansas, but they found a farm in New Jersey to be more appropriate. My favorite thing about that last one, yeah, was the little bottle of beer sitting there. And that was just on a canal tour in Copenhagen. Badlands. Like I said, we've done 50 states. These were in October that we went with another couple we often travel with, and we finished our last 2 states. And they are the most flyover states I've ever been in. The first 3/4, I think, of South Dakota, I kept saying, my eyes are bleeding from corn. But once you hit Rapid City area, a little east of that, where the Badlands are, oh my God, it's just drop dead gorgeous, and we really enjoyed it. Little Photoshop. I thought this was one of the most spectacular places I ever saw, and that was Peterhof in St. Petersburg. It's, too much gold and too many kings and queens and castles and summer homes. This was a summer home. This was the back garden. My old stomping grounds, Ocean City, New Jersey. And just some tips. Lose a lens cover, again. Buy a cheap pinch lens cover, or you can even now, they have those little foam ones you can buy. But if you, and I did this once, I lost a lens cover and I used a sock. It worked perfect. Protecting a lens, I use a lens hood. A lot of people hate them. They say, it just adds extra length. Man, it keeps your lens from getting banged up in the front. And I usually use a UV filter also for the same reason. I watched a friend drop a macro lens out of her car, and when she picked it up, it had rolled under her van, and when she picked it up, it just looked like the whole lens was shattered. And when we took the UV off, the lens was perfectly fine. The UV took the impact, so it's something to think about. Sudden shower. For yourself, you could just use one of those little dollar store things. Again, they don't weigh anything, they don't take any room. Throw them in your bag. And a kitchen trash bag, like I've mentioned before. If you need a tool and you don't have one, hotels, cruise ships, and everything, they do have maintenance departments. And if you're staying in an Airbnb, which we often do, start digging around. You'll be surprised at what's in all those drawers. Tripod and monopod get dirty. Open it completely up. Extend your legs all the way. Dry it off best you can. Run a hair dryer over it. Same thing with a ball head. It's got a lot of little areas that can get water in them. So kind of do your best to do that overnight if you can. Packing a down jacket. When we went to Norway, we were going to be gone, I think our total time gone was 18 days. And we were going to be traveling in the Arctic in June, so I wanted to take a down coat. And what I did is I kept rolling it up and then I would lay on it on the floor, and I had a big Ziploc bag and I stuffed it in there. And I'd push the air out, and I'd lay on it again. And after a few tries, you get all the air out, and you have a full-length coat, like it's this big, when you really get all the air out. So they are great things to take with you, is the packable down. And use your pouches to protect your gear. If you're using any belt system or have other pouches and stuff that you can carry your lenses in, use them. They will protect stuff. There are a whole bunch of websites like Road Trippers, only in your state and only in your city, that can help you route a really interesting car trip. We were driving through Mississippi and said, well, we got to stop somewhere. There must be something nice in this state somewhere. And we found, not far from where we were looking, as soon as we could get a cell signal, on, I believe, only in your state. I looked up Mississippi, and we were a couple miles from a state park. Of course, it was closed that day, but we went in anyway. And, you know, it was lovely. It was an old grist mill, and so there was plenty to see there. It was a beautiful river, and it was hot. I don't like hot. And Road Trippers is, if you put that you're starting out in, for us, North Ridgeville, Ohio, and we're driving to see my son in Fort Myers, Florida. All we would need to do is say, we want to see what there is along the way, and it will map out. You can filter by types of places, and it's roadtrippers.com. They have an app, I believe, too, and it is great for that. It will just populate just place after place along the way. And if you're willing to go a little bit off route, say 10 miles off of a highway, say, it'll then add places in that are just off a highway. So it's a really great way to look for things. And be prepared for emergencies. We unfortunately were in a pretty bad accident in Utah 3 years ago. And my husband could tell you, I mean, I guess we hydroplaned, he hit ice up in the middle of nowhere, Route 70, no cell signal, no nothing. And a lot of really wonderful people stopped and helped us. We had someone from California stop after they pulled us through the windshield to get us out of the car. A couple from California drove us to an exit 20 miles away where there was an ambulance waiting. I mean, I can't say enough about how helpful people were. And when we went in the ambulance and then in the emergency room, we had our little dachshund with us, and they kept her with us. In the emergency room, everything. I mean, we couldn't have had a kinder experience. But we didn't have we had rented a car. We didn't feel like putting the miles on our car since we were driving out there. So we said, well, you know, we rented a big van, and I never thought to bring our auto insurance cards, and we needed them. So fortunately, even though we both had concussions, we were able to remember that it was Geico, and the cops were able to dig in and find our insurance information. So if you're traveling somewhere in the country, even flying, and you're renting a car, take your auto insurance cards with you, or at least a copy of them, in your little plastic file folder thing that you carry with you. Know how to dial emergency services in the country you're in. They all have different numbers, so it's usually in a travel guide, very easy to find. List your prescription drugs and medical conditions, because once again, we get carried by ambulance with our dog, and first thing they ask is, well, gee, what's going on? What drugs are you on? And having that information, we both keep both of our prescriptions current and up to date on the Notes app on our phones, along with having it printed out. And emergency contacts are always good to have. And I would say the other thing to do is make copies of your passport. If you lose a passport and you at least have all that information and you have to go and get it replaced, it's a lot easier that way. And after our car rolled that we were in, this is what my photo gear looked like when I opened it. It was perfect. Nothing broke. Nothing was damaged. Everything was tightly packed. But there were 2 camera bodies in there, a bunch of lenses, filters, you name it, they were in there. And that was up for several months on Think Tank's website. I just sent them a note saying, you saved my gear, you know. And so anyway, I think that it's a good selling point. So whatever you use, there's other brands, I'm not trying to sell Think Tank, but whatever you use, just make sure you learn how to pack it effectively. And that's it. I do have a thing I can send you if you want it. Just email me. You all have my email address, I'm sure, at this point. And I can send you the websites that I like to use and some other information. That's it. And any questions, holler. And if you want to kind of look at that stuff and how I do.
Question. So when you're traveling, I have this, well, I don't travel much, but just nervousness about going out shooting on my own as a woman in strange places where, I'm not 100% sure they're safe or whatever. Like, do you do that alone? Are you comfortable with that, or you
I have.
drag your husband out?
I usually try and drag my husband, and he's usually a pretty willing draggy. I mean, he's really, when I say, oh, look at this pretty picture, it's like I sit and go through like 500 PX or Flickr or whatever and look for beautiful places to go. And if I see a couple pictures of someplace beautiful, I'll say, ooh, look at this. One time it was the Painted Hills, and I hadn't read the article yet to see where it was. I'm thinking, oh, it's probably that place in China. And it wasn't, it was in Oregon. So, yeah, would I go in the middle of nowhere by myself? Yeah, I would. I would, yeah. But I usually try and not do that.
The case in point was I said to her when I was leaving the hotel in San Diego that day, please don't go to Tijuana on your own.
Well, I was with a friend.
You mentioned bringing 3 batteries. Is that for each camera? And do you find that you actually need all that?
Well, I found that batteries have gotten better and the cameras tend to last longer, I mean, my 850, I could probably get, 2,000 pictures easily on a charge. But my mirrorless is not as good. So yeah, I am always, but I still, sometimes things happen. Something doesn't work right. So I always carry at least one a day for each camera with me, and at least one memory card, depending on what I'm expecting to encounter.
A couple comments.
Yeah.
Not to criticize your padded bags that you
Yeah.
use to subdivide. I use Ziplocs. And like with your down jacket, I compress them and zip them closed before I put them in. So like all my underwear go in one gallon-sized bag, and I do that.
Oh, that's a great idea.
And as far as the font goes, if the font you use on your computer is not on his computer, then you don't see it.
Oh, I bet that's it. Okay, that solves it. I'll put a more common font next time. Oh, that's easily done. Yeah. Yeah, Fran?
I know the common question is, oh, where's your favorite place? The other thing is what's some of the places you will never go again, you don't like, or recommending it's just not worth going all the way to
I don't
the,
like the Caribbean a whole lot. I didn't see much I liked there. I hated Panama.
people talk about the Leaning Tower of Pisa, it takes 3 hours to get to, I've never traveled, but it takes all this time to get there. They do their famous
I've
little
not been.
picture, and then they're disappointed because it takes so long to just get there. Like
Yeah.
you said, you have to do your homework.
Yeah, do your homework. And I think the least, I would have to say some places in the Caribbean, yet we were in Colombia, in Cartagena. I loved it there. It was gorgeous. It was just, so it was a place that I was kind of afraid to go. And we were on a Panama Canal cruise, and we felt like that was a place we had to stay on a guided tour so that we didn't end up somewhere we shouldn't be. But they showed us the really pretty parts of the city. But I would be afraid to venture out on my own in a place where I didn't speak the language at all. And I had kind of a bad news story, kind of, drug lord place, but it was being beautifully redone. And favorite places, I would say Norway, Iceland, Newfoundland. And we've been to so many places here. Craig? Favorite place in the U.S.? I mean, it's a beautiful country.
I think just traveling through the West when you're out there and all the canyon country and all the special parks that are out there. That,
Yeah.
For me, as a flatlander, it's hard to find a parallel.
Yeah, it's just,
I would just say this. We've been lucky to do a lot of travel over the years. Some hopping onto business trips, others strictly by design from the start that we were going to make this trip. Watching her evolve through all this, pack all this stuff up. I think the simple rule is everything has a place, and that thing is in it. So
Yeah.
when you have to find it, you know where to go for it. And when you sit it down, you put it back in that spot. You don't rest it on the fence post that's sitting in front of you and then drive to the next town. But,
Yeah.
And the rules are the rules for packing this stuff until she decides they don't work, and then you find a new way to do it and make that the way you do it from there on. If you've been traveling with cameras and all that gear to begin with, you've got a great leg up on it already, I know. But it's a different thing when you're looking for something like documents or this and that, and suddenly you can't find it, and you can't say it's either on the desk or the kitchen counter because there ain't nowhere around you. And it's different when the guard in front of you has maybe a machine gun over his shoulder. So,
yeah, and they often
it's good
do.
to know where everything is and just try to anticipate what you might need.
Yeah, very true. And I think we're that way at home too. We're very organized. Everything has a place, especially since we moved to a smaller home 4 years ago. But just when you're traveling, know where your stuff is. Know where your documents are, of all things. And keep them on you. Don't leave them in your hotel room. And one thing we've seen a few things over the years, but one of the things I saw that was really quite stunning, I thought, was I was in Russia, I was with my mom. Craig was not on this trip. And it was a Baltic cruise we went on. My mom will only go on cruises. And so this is what we did. And we were in line going through customs again to get back on the cruise ship. And this is quite a process there. To leave the ship, you went through it. To get back on the ship, you went through it. So we're waiting in line, and there was 2 women traveling together in front of us. How the cruise line ever screwed this up so royally, I will never know. She should have never been allowed on the ship. But the airline let her on too. She had to fly to Copenhagen. But what happened was her passport, I guess she had just gotten a new passport. And her story was, oh, I started to put my old passport in the shredder, and then I figured out it was my new passport I was putting in the shredder. Well, by pretty much international law, you cannot have a damaged passport, even if it's just a couple pages or just the cover. And she actually put it in the shredder, carried it with her, gets off the ship, has no problem. I guess that guy wasn't paying attention. We go to get back on the ship. All of a sudden, everything's held up. And they actually closed everything down for a bit. All of a sudden, 5 cops come running in. And I don't think I want to see the inside of a Russian prison or police station or anything else. And I do not know what happened that night. I know that the one woman was on the boat, the other one was not. So I'm sure that, this was like 2017, so things hadn't gotten as bad as they are now, but that was scary. And I think the other thing that we had happen that was weird was coming into, we had been on a cruise. My son talked us into going on one at Bahamas. It was only a few days. And my husband had been treated for cancer. And the radiation set off everything in the cruise port going through. And all of a sudden they're yelling, "Shut it down, shut it down." And we're like, oh, and Craig's like, uh-oh, I think I know what happened. The machine that could we got detained. The machine that could differentiate between bad radiation and medical radiation was broken.
The other one I wanted to comment on was Bev spoke about how we went into an Airbnb room and there were people in there already. And when she was telling the story, she said, we spent the rest of our night then, and I thought she was going to say running for our lives. But no, truth be told, we only had to run to the car. Then we drove the rest of the night looking for lodging.
But yeah, I mean, that was crazy. You know, that's the last thing you expect. So we've had a few experiences over the years. So anyway, if anybody would like to look at the garbage I carry, the computer case is all stained up with chocolate. Brody, our step-grandson, is 9, and he put a chocolate bar in my computer case for me. And it melted. I was in Florida. And, oh, that was the other thing. Be careful and be prepared. Not all. I went through Cleveland. They had dogs sniffing us. We didn't have to open up anything. Other times it's you have to take your phone out or maybe a computer. You have to take everything out in Fort Myers. Cameras, lenses, everything had to be taken out. So every airport is a little bit different with the different types of stuff that they have and scanners and whatever. So be prepared for that. Get to the airport plenty early. You might have to repack your case. Okay?
Any other questions? Any at all? Well, thank you very much, Bev and Craig. Thank you again. With travel season coming up, a lot of good tips. Well, thank you, everyone, and we will see you all next week.
There's a first day of seventh grade.